Well, thank you for coming back. I have some breaking news for you. The Colleton County Courthouse, where the trial of Alex Murdaugh is being held, has been evacuated. Has been evacuated. Let me repeat that. Has been evacuated. Why? Due to a reported bomb threat. They're moving people away from the courthouse right now for safety. As soon as we can get to our own Gigi McKelvey, we will have her on the air to talk about what is happening at that courthouse, where Alex Murdaugh may be being moved to, and what the precautions that are being taken are in place. Again, breaking news, there has been a reported bomb threat at the Colleton County Courthouse where Alex Murdaugh has been on trial. Now, indeed, Fanon, let me just tell you, Judge Rucker, you talked about this earlier. We know we have a recess until about 2:30 where the judge is combining a lunch break and to try to find out what's going on. But let me ask you about this. Somebody who calls in a bomb threat in a high-profile case, who do you look for? Do you look for somebody who's just trying to make a scene, who's trying to make a name for themselves, some sick person who just wants to disrupt proceedings, or do you look for somebody with a motive who wants to disrupt proceedings, either for Alex Murdaugh or somebody else? Who do you look for, Judge Rucker?
Well, I will say that on something like this, in this day and age, with so many people who are seeking attention, it's a needle in a haystack, unless there have been other threats that have been issued before this time that the general public was simply not made aware of, but that investigators, law enforcement, court personnel, possibly the FBI may have been aware of. And this may be the culmination of that. What we're seeing is a tip of the iceberg of somebody calling in. It very honestly could be someone who was watching this proceeding on TV because it is high profile, and they're sitting around like, ooh, let me see if I can impact this somehow. And now are sitting back watching, the fruits of their labors with everybody outside kind of nervous, having disrupted a nationally observed proceeding.
Now, Judge, let me just stop you. Let me just ask you right now, because we're seeing our pictures, our photographer is taking right outside the courthouse. What is happening there? Let me ask you this. We talked just before we went back in the courtroom about the effect of things on jurors in a high-profile case. Here, I don't know when, if the jury is being told that there has been a reported bomb threat, but you and I both know that if they haven't been told, they will learn it, that jurors learn these things, all right, because the family members will be around, they'll be concerned about them. The jurors concerned for their own safety in a case like this, how does this now impact it?
Well, what we do know is historically there have been cases where jurors after the fact have talked about, what they had going on, or jurors who have been dismissed have discussed how they were aware of the public clamor or things going on outside that could potentially, cause risk to their own families or to their decisions. And so certainly where they have been rapidly evacuated from the middle of the trial, you're right, they're going to find out what happened. The judge may even tell them himself, so that there's not so many open-ended questions about what's going on, thinking that their sensitivities may be better served by letting them know what happened. But everything that occurs in a courtroom during a jury trial is going to cause the jury to have a raised eyebrow and a second view of what it is that they're involved in. And I'm certain that these events will do this with this jury.
So, Judge, as we're looking at these pictures that our photographer from the Law&Crime Network is taking outside the Colleton County Courthouse, which has been evacuated for a reported bomb threat, and the trial of Alex Murdaugh will be in recess until 2:30 p.m. Let me ask you this as a judge. Do you have to bring that jury in one by one and ask them whether this has any impact on them?
Certainly that would be an appropriate thing. That would be an appropriate thing, and I would not be surprised if the judge does that. Again, the sensitivities of the jurors always has to be kept in mind. And if there is any concern that this incident has caused any one of them, because any one of them can cause a decision to be rendered one way or the other, or a mistrial. So if there's any concern that this evacuation and the potential bomb threat or the potential threat that they're under as a result of this trial has caused, then yes, I think it would be appropriate, not required, but certainly would be appropriate.
How about witnesses, Judge? Talk to me two things. I'm going to give you an A and a comma. Witnesses who have not yet testified, or remember the defense is going to say, if I'm the defense, that Alex Murdaugh had a lot of enemies, and we talked about this prior to the bomb threat, and therefore there are a lot of suspects out there. Does this lead into that for them? Are they going to be able to use this in any way, or would you, as a judge, make a ruling that they can't?
No, I would, as a judge, I would certainly issue a ruling or a determination that it would not be appropriate for the jurors to remark, for the defense or the prosecution to remark in any way on this incident unless investigations reveal right now or in the very near future that someone associated with either the state or the defense or a potential witness was was involved in this. If that information comes out, then I'd say, yeah, you all have at it. But otherwise, it's speculative. And because of the innumerable possible sources of this call-in thread or however it came in, it would be unfair and irrational for the jurors to be able to hear testimony about what this may be related to and why they should take that in consideration for their decision.
And as telling the viewers again who may have just tuned in, the trial of Alex Murdaugh has been adjourned until 2:30 p.m. because there was a reported bomb threat at the Colleton County Courthouse. The courthouse is being evacuated, has been evacuated. We're waiting for our own Gigi McKelvey to get to a safe place as the law enforcement is going to investigate this to make sure no one will be harmed. Right now, it's just a reported bomb threat. We hope, obviously, that it's not a real bomb that has been placed. But Judge, if you are now sitting on this case, and I bring you back to this, we have a lot of people now impacted, whether they be witnesses, whether they be reporters, whether they be the participants, the prosecution, the defense in regard to this. And at this point, we still don't know if that's a real bomb threat or if it was somebody just trying to make a name for themselves. So you're sitting there, you're Judge Newman right now. What information do you want to make sure that everyone is safe going forward and that this does not impact witnesses' testimony, witnesses coming forward, or jurors?
Well, certainly I call in court security. I have a conversation with whatever chief law enforcement or supervisor is in charge of the scene, and I ask them very directly if there is evidence that this was related to anyone who was involved in this case. And certainly the court, or the law enforcement have to have limitations on what they reveal, but to the judge involved in this case, they would at least give preliminary information if they have it. And I, as the judge, would ask that information to ensure that this case could go forward safely. It's safely for the witnesses, safely for the jurors, and really for myself before we go back into that courtroom and resume testimony. And I'd also want to know if this was an isolated incident that we don't have to keep worrying about this, or if we have to be concerned that every hour, every 2 hours, every day, there's going to be an emergency evacuation while we, look into something that most likely is not legitimate.
Yeah. Judge, just let's go forward on that because, again, right now our viewers are watching from our own photographer who is taking pictures outside the Colleton County Courthouse from a far enough distance so that everyone is safe, including everyone inside the courthouse, including the judge who has to be evacuated. So he has to go someplace else, right, to run his courtroom, to get information. Now, you have family members of jurors who are watching this, right? And they don't know whether this is a real bomb threat or not. What, as a judge, would you say to the family members of the jurors who have to decide this case fairly? Because one of the things that has been just around this trial, it's been like the elephant in the room, is that the Murdaugh family is so powerful that maybe no one, even the state, can't get a fair trial. So what would you say to the jurors at this point, the family members of those jurors, about the safety?
Well, I mean, I just reinforce that, we do have within the court system and generally within our society some very powerful investigative and enforcement tools to protect individuals who are part of the system. I would reinforce that understanding to the jurors and to their families. And I would remind the jurors' families that their family members are, underwent a pretty intense process to be able to sit on this jury in judgment. They're thoughtful. they're careful, they're introspective. That was all the things that was concluded for them to be able to sit in this jury. And certainly, if any fear or concern for their safety or their family safety, that they should be assured that that would be communicated to the judge, and that person would be adequately protected and possibly even released.
So if you are thinking about this from an outsider, or the judge sitting on the case, Judge Newman, who obviously have been moved to another location because he will not be in the courthouse getting phone calls or running this case, who would you be looking at again? Now, do you think it was somebody who wanted to disrupt the proceedings because they didn't like the evidence, or what is your leaning as a person, a judge who's had a number of high-profile cases? Do you think this is some crackpot who wants to disrupt the evidence because that way they control the media, control the prosecution, control the defense?
Honestly, that's more what I'm looking at right now. Like I said, this case is like a movie, and so the potential players or potential individuals who could be involved and why this could be happening really has an endless stream of thought. But what I also know about our society, look at social media, look at the television. People film themselves committing murders. People post in anything to get likes and retweets and to get people to look at them. I can truly see this being someone who is delighting in the fact that they were able to cause conflict and chaos while they're watching it happen on TV, really completely unconnected to this case. I can see that possibly being true. What would really be at the heart of whether or not we'll find out who this is, again, is whether or not law enforcement has received other information or threats before this day, before this happened, that could lead them to understand that someone was likely going to do this and even lead to that particular person.
Let me remind our viewers a couple things. One, the courthouse in Colleton County has been evacuated for an alleged bomb threat, we're being told, and the Alex Murdaugh trial is in recess till 2:30. And when we left, it was Brian Hudak. He was a SLED agent, a South Carolina Law Enforcement Division agent who had just started his direct. I mean, barely got his name out with some questions that were just at the beginning of what he was going to tell the jury, when the judge promptly, immediately, and quickly and without notice said, we have to adjourn this trial. So, Judge, how important is it, number one, to take threats like this seriously, and when you take threats like this seriously, how important will it be to find the person so you can try to make an example that this cannot be done to ruin any criminal proceeding or civil proceeding, justice proceeding, I should say, in the future?
That's right. It's so incredibly important. I mean, look at the time and resources spent, halting the trial, removing individuals. They're doing a complete sweep of the courthouse now with a bomb detecting dog or some other type of technology equipment in order to detect, what may be devices. Heaven forbid they find something. But if this is not true, look at the potential every time anywhere around the country someone decides to do this same thing. So it is incredibly important that all available resources are expended to find, identify, prosecute, and punish whoever is responsible for this, so that it can be clearly understood that this is absolutely unacceptable, and those that do it will, in fact, be held responsible. Technology in the world today is so advanced that it's so easy to trace what people are doing, where people are, almost what people are thinking at any given time, that it's hard to believe that people believe they can do this and get away with it. And again, with what they're having to do because of this threat, there are going to be all efforts to find who did it. And it is important that they actually find this person, and quickly, so that those who are conducting the trial can be comfortable in knowing that they don't have to worry about the legitimate threat or even the disruption of threats like this in the future.
Now, Judge, I'll remind our viewers again that there has been an alleged bomb threat we are hearing and reported at the Colleton County Courthouse, that the courthouse that housed the trial for